You grew up too fast. And the worst part is, most people who did have no idea it even happened. Ever wonder why you feel more comfortable taking care of others than letting anyone take care of you? Today, I'll explain childhood parentification like you're 5 years old. By the end, you'll understand exactly why you became the responsible one and what that cost you. They just noticed one day that something felt off. They were tired in a way sleep didn't fix, and being needed felt normal, but being taken care of felt unbearable. That they spent their whole childhood being called mature, being called the responsible one, and somehow that felt like a compliment. Right up until the moment they realized it wasn't. Here's what I'm going to show you today. There's a name for what happened to you. There's a name for it, and there's a mechanism behind it. Once you see it clearly, you'll understand a version of yourself you've been trying to figure out for years. Let's start with a scene. You're 8 years old, maybe 9. Something is wrong in your house. Not wrong like a broken appliance, but wrong like a weather system nobody named. There's tension between adults, financial stress, a parent who is emotionally somewhere else entirely. Nobody has explained what's happening, but you can feel it. And here's what you do without anyone asking you to. You get quiet, you scan the room, you read every face, and you figure out what everyone needs. And then you go provide it, without asking for anything in return. You make yourself small or useful, or both. And afterward, people tell you how good you are, how mature and how helpful you are. What they don't realize, and what you couldn't possibly have known, is that you just worked your first shift as the family's emotional caretaker. And you never really clocked out. Not once. Here's what was actually happening in your brain during that moment. You have a threat detection system. It's fast, automatic, and it was built to keep you alive. And for most of human history, the biggest threat wasn't a predator. It was losing the group. For a child, that threat isn't abstract. It's physical. A child without a present, functioning caregiver is genuinely in danger. So the brain does something very logical. It sends a message that basically says, figure out what this adult needs, give it to them, and keep the connection intact. Don't wait or ask questions. Just go. That's not dysfunction. That's survival software running exactly as designed. But here's the problem. The thing you learned to do to keep the attachment safe, that became the thing you thought you were supposed to be. The caretaker. The responsible one. The one who holds it together. And you got so good at it so fast that you skipped straight over the part where you were just allowed to be a kid. Now, here's the part most people never get told, because what happened to you actually has 2 different forms, and they leave very different marks. Psychologists call this parentification. The first form is instrumental parentification. That's when a child takes on adult responsibilities. Managing the household, caring for siblings, handling logistics no adult should outsource to someone in elementary school. You made dinner. You handled phone calls. You became fluent in adult problems before you understood the words. Picture a 9-year-old navigating a phone call with a landlord because the parent couldn't face it. Staying calm, choosing the right words, managing the outcome. That's not maturity. That's a job nobody hired them for. The second form is emotional parentification. That one is quieter, harder to see. It's when a child becomes the emotional support system for a parent, the confidant, the one the parent vents to, leans on, needs. You learn to read your parents' moods like a weather forecast because the whole day depended on what you found. Think of a kid sitting at the kitchen table while a parent downloads their adult grief, their adult fear, their adult loneliness, and that kid just absorbing it, holding it, nodding. Their needs? They went into a drawer. Not because they were weak, because putting them in the drawer kept the peace. Both forms have the same effect on the nervous system. They train a child to monitor others before monitoring themselves, to measure safety by how well the people around them are doing, not by how they feel. The alarm system doesn't fire for their own discomfort anymore. It fires for everyone else's. And then that child grows up. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the behavior doesn't disappear just because the original threat does. The threat was, if I'm not useful, the attachment breaks. The response was, make yourself indispensable. That response got wired deep. And now it runs automatically. In relationships, at work, in every room you walk into. You say yes before you've checked with yourself. You feel more comfortable being needed than being vulnerable. You're the one who holds it together when everyone else falls apart. Not because you chose that role, but because it's the only role your nervous system knows how to play. Your brain is still sending the old message, be useful, stay safe, don't need anything. The cruelest part? It looks like a strength, because you are competent, you are dependable, you do hold it together. The cost is invisible, until you're exhausted. Until someone tries to take care of you and something in you recoils, like a reflex you didn't choose. Until you realize you genuinely don't know what you want. Not because you're confused, but because you were never really asked. Researchers find that parentified children consistently score lower on measures of self-awareness around their own needs. Not because something is wrong with them, but because that muscle was simply never exercised. Your brain has a filing system. Every time you learned that your needs were secondary, whether someone said it out loud or you just absorbed it from the atmosphere, your brain filed it. Filed it as, this is how relationships work. My job is to give. Needing is dangerous. Rest is irresponsible. Being vulnerable means being a burden. Those are beliefs you chose. They're conclusions your brain drew to survive a situation that didn't offer better options. Here's the plot twist. The version of you that grew up too fast was not a failure of your childhood. It was a success of your adaptation. Your brain read the environment, identified the survival strategy, and executed it flawlessly. You kept yourself safe. You kept the people around you regulated. You became exactly who everyone needed you to be. The only thing you didn't get to become was yourself. So, back to that scene. You're 8 years old. Something is wrong in the house, and you get quiet. You scan. You make yourself useful, and you get called mature. Now you see it differently. That kid wasn't mature. That kid was scared. That kid had found a very smart strategy for managing an adult situation they should never have been handed. And that strategy worked so well, so consistently, that it became identity. Not a phase, not a habit, an identity. The reframe is this. The patterns you're living with now, the over-responsibility, the inability to receive, the compulsive caretaking, the low-grade guilt every time you prioritize yourself, those aren't character flaws. They're survival strategies that outlived their original purpose. The right answer to the wrong problem. And the reason they're so hard to drop is that your nervous system still believes you need them. Here's what we actually covered. Your brain built a survival strategy to keep connection intact. It got wired so deep, it became identity. And every pattern you've been calling a flaw is just old software that never got an update. You don't unlearn this overnight. But here's the one thing that actually starts to shift it. You have to practice letting the answer to, what do you need? Not be, I'm fine. Not a breakthrough. Not a life overhaul. Just the next time someone asks, or the next time you have the space to ask yourself, don't go straight to the answer that takes up the least room. Don't default to whatever keeps the peace. Pause. Actually check. Sit with the discomfort of that pause long enough to hear something honest come back. You spent years developing precision in reading everyone else's internal state. You might be genuinely out of practice doing it for yourself. That's not a character flaw either. It's a skill you never got to build. And skills can be learned. So here's the question, and it's a real one, not a rhetorical one. If growing up fast was the adaptation, what does finally growing up at your own pace actually look like for you?